Okay, great. So welcome everyone. My name is Hilary Barabo. I'm going to be talking about our Cambridge University Press Read and Publish deal. I am the Scholarly Communications Librarian here at Colby College. We'll be talking a little bit about what a transformative agreement is. We'll be talking about what our deal comprises of, and then I'll be walking you through the author requirements and the publishing workflow, some of the Creative Commons licensing knowledge that you will need when you select your own Creative Commons license, and a little bit of the terms and what we call the colors of OA, and then we'll get into our Q&A session. I'm joined today by Ana Noriega. She's my colleague here in the library who will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. So a little bit about me, I am Hilary Barabo. Like I said, I am the Scholarly Communications Librarian. I joined Colby really recently in January this year. I have expertise in the publishing landscapes, open access, research metrics and impact, copyright and fair use, and open pedagogy. My experience comes from my time as an e-resources assistant at Bates College, a digital scholarship librarian at the University of Wyoming, and an associate managing editor at Wiley. I want to talk a little bit about what transformative agreements are generally. Read and publish is a kind of transformative agreement, and a read and publish deal essentially is a subscription contract that includes the funding for both the subscription material that the institution reads and the funding for publishing open access for members of that institution, usually through article processing charges or APCs, which are often required for publishing open access. In terms of our agreement, it is a 3-school agreement between Colby, Bates, and Bowdoin. It is a 3-year term from January of this year until the end of December 2023. It provides access to Cambridge journals to read and unlimited APC funds towards authors who wish to publish open access in select gold journals or hybrid journals in Cambridge University Press. This deal came at no additional charge to our original subscription costs, and each APC agreement covers an average of $2,610. In terms of how an author qualifies for coverage for an APC, the author must be a corresponding author from Colby, Bates, or Bowdoin. The article type submitted for consideration to the journal must be either a research article, a review article, or a rapid communication. Book reviews, brief reports, discussions, meeting notes don't count towards this deal. There are only certain journal titles that qualify, and you can find the full list at our CBB Cambridge University Press OA agreement homepage. The link will be put in the chat, and the link is also at the end of this presentation. You can also search for qualifying titles using the CUP OA checker tool. The link will also be put in the chat. These journals are all hybrid or gold OA journals, and they range in all discipline areas, so be sure to check. The articles must be accepted for publication within the terms of our agreement, so that is between January of 2021 and December 2023. In terms of the steps you need as you're submitting your manuscript for consideration, there are some things to consider. So when you submit, you should be alerted that The journal that you've submitted to is covered under our read and publish deal. So if it's accepted, you could request an APC waiver. The next step is the decision step. So if your manuscript is accepted, you will be asked to select an open access, uh, open access or subscription model for publishing your article. And you will be alerted that if you choose to publish open access, your APC funds will be covered under the read and publish deal. And then the final step is your OA agreement, where you confirm that you will be seeking funding and you will confirm your licensing type through selecting a Creative Commons license. So let's look into this a little bit closer. So we'll go into some of the workflow details. So the two details that I want to look at are the acceptance and the licensing. So the decision and then the licensing. So when your article is accepted, you're going to be asked whether you want to publish it gold access or subscription. You'll want to select gold access because your APC will be covered. However, if you fail to do so because you weren't aware that your APC will be covered and you select subscription, you will be reminded by Cambridge University Press that you do still have the option to select gold access because of our read and publish deal. So you still have the option to select subscription if that's how you would like to publish, but you can select gold access and have your APC covered to make sure that your article is published open access. Next, you will be asked to select a Creative Commons license to go with your open access article. This is a brief overview of your Creative Commons license options. They range from the least restrictive to the most restrictive. So least restrictive is CC BY, and most restrictive is CC BY NC NDSA. So non-commercial, no derivatives, share alike. For more details about the specific licensing, you can either go to the Cambridge University Press Creative Commons page, or you can go to the Creative Commons website, which will explain a little bit more about each of these licenses. And also, there's a Creative Commons license tool where you can search for a license that's the best fit for you. The licenses determine how others are able to use the work that you've published. So really carefully consider how you want your work to be distributed and used. Do you see your work being used in an OER, for example? Also, other publishers could use your work as well. So you need to keep that in mind. Would you allow someone to make money off of this content? So there should be some careful consideration when choosing your Creative Commons license. Now, the final step is to sign a rights link agreement. And this is where you will be asking and requesting funding for the APC coverage from Colby. I am the Colby Rights Link manager, so all requests will go through me. So if you do have any questions about this step, please don't hesitate to ask, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. So once you've selected your Creative Commons license, this triggers the next step in the process where an email will be sent to you asking you to create a Rights Link account where you will select Seek Funding from my institution. That is the request to have your APC covered. The wording on this is a little bit funny because it sounds like you're saying, please pay my APC, and it's not apparent that the APC is already covered, but it is. The language beforehand should have made that clear, and you can always double check in the list of journals that are covered, and you can always ask as well. I'd be happy to look up journals for you. Your request will be reviewed and approved within 24 hours. On the whole, from the time you select your Creative Commons license to your APC approval, it usually takes about 48 hours. Now, I wanted to take a little bit of time to make sure we had time to go over some open access terms. Now, these are terms we've already been using during this presentation, but there are also some terms that I haven't been using but would be helpful for you to know. These terms range from journal level open access to article level open access, and there are slight differences. There are also differences in terms used by commercial publishers and librarians, which makes some of the language really confusing. Um, Language often shifts with context, so we have to keep an eye out for that. But here are some terms that are good for you to know. A hybrid journal is a journal that offers both open access and subscription models of publication. The hybrid journal is one of the highest rising types of journals offered on the market today. Gold open access is a type of journal and also a type of article that is open access. A gold open access journal usually requires an APC. A diamond open access journal, or platinum, as it's often called, is an open access journal that does not require an APC. So it is free to read and free to publish. Bronze open access is a access type that is free content, but at the discretion of the publisher. And green open access is a open access type where an article is available usually through a subject or institutional repository. So our institutional repository at Colby is Digital Commons. Usually green open access only allows you to submit copies that are of different versions of your article. So that could be a preprint, a postprint, or the author accepted manuscript, but sometimes it could be the version of record from the publisher. It all depends on the publisher's restrictions. So I did want to briefly go over some questions that I thought would come up during this presentation. So the first one is, do students qualify? And they do qualify as long as the corresponding author has a school email address from a CVV school, they qualify. The next question, is there a limit on the number of APC requests per author? And there is no limit. Lastly, I did want to make clear that CC licenses, Creative Commons licenses, really specify how others can use your work, but not how you can reuse your work. The author publishing agreement is really about how you can use your work based on your agreement with the publisher. For details on how you can reuse your work, you will need to read that publishing agreement very carefully. For Cambridge University Press, they do say that they have the non-exclusive right to publish, and the copyright is maintained by the author. For other publishers, this could be different. So it's always important to make sure that you're paying very close attention to that language when signing your author publishing agreement. And now we have some time for questions. And I have all of the links that we put into the chat on this last slide. So I'm going to stop my share. And feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat, or you're free to unmute yourself since we're such a small group today.
Just for clarity, basically, because I kind of went ahead and looked at all of the articles that are under this agreement, and it's basically like all of the premier, at least in my field, premier articles through Cambridge.
The journals?
The journal stat, that's what I mean, sorry. And so basically the open access just means, for example, if I wanted to share it on Twitter, if people aren't associated with a college, right? Like my family can't go and read the articles, but if I select the open access, now all of a sudden I can share it. And my friends and family who aren't associated with the university will now be able to have access to it in a way that they wouldn't have before. That's like basically the big change here, right?
Absolutely. So open access means it is unrestricted access to that content. It is possible there could be an embargo period.
Mm,
So there could be at a period of time where it is restricted. But for the most part, the content should be freely accessible to anyone, no
okay.
paywall, and no other barriers to access.
Okay. So that's the sort of the big shift here.
Yes.
And um, the other piece is, so just thinking about the workflow that you were describing. So once you're accepted, there it's automatically going to ask you these types of questions. So you don't have to like link in or do something special to get to this place. It's just going to move you through and ask. Okay.
It
All right,
should.
that's cool.
It is going to be slightly confusing
Okay.
because it is going to have specific wording that you're going to want to pay attention to. The first piece of the specific wording is the access type, paywalled or open access,
Oh,
subscription or gold open access. And they put the gold in there, and that's where I really wanted to make sure I went over
okay.
some of the terms. And by then, that's where the foreknowledge is going to come in handy, where you are confident this is a journal that I know is covered by my APC agreement. So I'm going to select gold because when I
Right.
request funding, it's all good. It's all set.
Okay. So that's the magic word is gold.
Gold.
Okay.
Gold is good. And then
Okay.
the next step that is kind of on you is to request the funding by creating a rights link account.
All
They
right.
will send you an email saying this is what you need to do, but then you need to go do that. That is something that you will need to
Okay.
do. The email should help you in terms of being clear of the directions and the steps you'll need to follow, but
Okay.
maybe it'll end up in spam. Maybe it'll be,
Right.
there are different things going to happen along the way. So if you do get confused, just feel free to email me and I'm happy to walk you through it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will send the recording out and send the slides as well. And if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to email me.